And we are back. What's up, guys? Welcome back. After a long hiatus, we are back here with False Flag Radio. This is Brometheus.
And William Revere checking in.
Let's get back into it, guys. As I mentioned on Facebook and in our last episode, I was just on a 7-week expedition down to Peru to investigate some of the mysterious, historical sites, and also the elongated skull phenomenon, and just to kind of make sense of this whole thing that's going down in Peru, because Peru is kind of this convergence point for so much of the mysterious activity and things that we talk about on this show. It's a big hub of the ancient aliens community.
Yep.
But there's just whether or not you buy into that, I'm still undecided. But there's just so much unexplained phenomena down there, and I had to choose which country I wanted to investigate during this time off that I had. So I thought there's so much of this concentrated in one location, so many things I want to see in one place. This is just a no-brainer.
Like you said, it's a hotbed for the extraterrestrial. You've got the Machu Picchu there.
Speak up a little.
You've got Machu Picchu,
Yep.
Which you did get a chance to visit.
Yep.
And we're going to go into detail about that afterwards.
Yeah.
But I'm most excited to hear about the skulls, and I think I think our viewers are going to really get a kick out of that. You got to see them, and we're going to get some pictures up for you guys to see too.
I took a bunch of pictures, and those are going to be up on the Facebook feed for you guys to check out as well. So pictures worth 1,000 words, but we're going to help you make sense of what you're looking at these pictures, because there's a lot of these skulls that have been on the circuit, if you will, and some of them I think ended up being fake, or they were not what they were espoused to be. But this stuff is the real deal that I saw down in Paracas.
And you were able to meet with the expert in the field. That's correct.
Brian Foster.
Yeah.
He's been featured on the History Channel, Ancient Aliens, and on many other programs. He's been on Red Ice Radio.
That's incredible.
And a couple things, but we're gonna jump into that now. So why don't you take this away, Mr. Revere? And we'll do this interview style, because
sure.
I'm still trying to process everything that happened. It's hard for me to even know where to start. I've only been back like 5 days now.
Yeah.
So
let's take it easy. Let's get into it, and we'll ease our way into this. Let's talk
absolutely.
about. And you did have a chance to have some fun down there too.
Yep.
Experience.
Yep.
It wasn't just a work.
Not all work. Thing. This was not strictly a business trip.
What was it like getting to Peru for the first time as somebody who has been to Europe before, but never really South America? I know you've been to Mexico before.
Sure.
But what was different about Peru than the other places that you've been to?
Well, I would say Peru is like the first like truly developing country I've been to. Like first third world country I've been to. I've been to Mexico before, but Mexico is considerably more developed than most of South America is, especially where I was. I was in the Yucatan region. Like you fly into Cancun, and then
it's very touristy.
Yeah. Well, Cancun is specifically built as a tourist city by the Mexican government, but I saw Chichen Itza and a lot of megalithic sites like that when I was in Mexico. But it's Mexico, the highways are very developed, the power grid's stable, the internet's pretty reliable, everything. South America is just a whole different world. I mean, you
talk to us about the living conditions there.
Living conditions? Okay.
Yeah,
well,
you specifically talked about seemingly polar opposites in living conditions in very close proximity to each other.
Yeah. Well, I spent most of my time in Lima when I was there. That's the capital city on the coastline. Huge city, about 10 million people, so it's a little bigger than New York.
Wow.
But The area I was staying in is the city's divided into about 40 districts, and the district I was staying in was called Miraflores, which is right on the coastline, and that's kind of like the I guess it's kind of like the touristy slash new money part of the city. It's walking around at times, you'd swear you were in like Miami Beach or something like that.
Wow.
The only difference being that it's like one third the cost of Miami, and it's the whole city's built on a series of cliffs overlooking the ocean. So it's like a 500-foot drop down, and then there's a highway that goes to the airport, and then down there is the beach. It's not like you can't like
there's no walking to the beach, really.
you can, but it's a pain in the ass. I did it. I got a horrible sunburn to show for it, but this part of the city I was in was very nice. But as you alluded to just now, there is a lot of extreme disparity in income that you see in South America. Like you'll have these richer districts like Miraflores or San Isidro to the north of it, and then you keep going like another mile inland. Suddenly you're in the slums. Like it is very apparent when you have walked into the wrong neighborhood. I met several people down there because there's a lot of expats from the U.S., Canada, and Europe and whatnot living there. And I got to talk to a lot of them and kind of pick their brains. And, they gave me tons of suggestion what parts of the city to avoid, what parts of the city to check out. And almost every one of them had some story that either happened to themselves or someone they knew about. They'd been there a little too long. They got a little too cocky and they were walking around the wrong neighborhood. And,
something happened.
Yeah. One guy... one person I know, she was telling me her roommate, a French guy, was walking around this one neighborhood, which during the day you're okay, but you shouldn't be there at night. And like 11 people like cornered him and like kind of roughed him up a little, took his wallet and his house keys from him. And they had to have the locks changed on the house and everything because they found out where he was living. They had his address and everything. So. And because of that, where the more higher income neighborhoods begin, you start to see a lot of the houses that have like walls around them, and like these are private residences with walls with barbed wire and electrical fences around them. It's just like it's like a 8-foot tall brick wall. It's very decorated, looks nice, has ivy growing on it and shit. And then you look at top, and there's like an extra foot of electrical fence on the top, and that's just the first time you see it. It really weirds you out, but after a couple days, it becomes normal. It's what stands out after a few days of seeing this are the houses that don't have it. Like they don't have ADT security system or whatever. Yeah. They're just like, fuck it, I don't trust the cops to come here in time. The cops are corrupt. You can bribe cops to do whatever you want or whatever you want them to not do there. The country is corrupt from top to bottom.
Wow.
I heard from numerous people that work there, both Peruvians and expats. So people, to a certain extent, they take their own safety and security into their own hands. They just get these like razor wire and shit, or spikes put on their house. I saw one house with I guess they were a little tight up for money. They didn't have the money for barbed wire, so they just put cement on the top of the wall and just shattered beer bottles on the top.
Wow.
Creative.
That's creative.
Yeah, it's creative, but it's just...
It's crazy to think that was the norm there. What you got to think, what the hell has happened that kind of security is necessary for homes.
Well, I think to me it's indicative of a lack of trust. Like there's a huge problem with people like Peruvians in general are very nice. They're very friendly. I know no one was mean or disrespectful to me down there, but there is also an issue with people trying to like rip you off and scam you, and like things like just theft and fraud are a huge problem down there.
It's a
Like,
bargaining culture, right?
well, yeah, but uh, that's not related to the security around houses. I think there's this constant suspicion that people, at least in Lima, have of each other. So and that's reflected in the architecture. That's uh, in communities where there's a lot of trust, you're not going to have houses with that look like they're an armory.
Right.
But that's just the norm down there. People are highly suspicious of people they don't know. Like everyone's always trying to hustle each other down there. I split a cab from the airport with a Peruvian American guy. He actually lived close to me in Virginia. We never knew each other until that moment. And like when we pick up our bags at baggage claim, you're given a little ticket to prove that it's your bag. But the security guys didn't check me at all, but they stopped him to check, asked to see his tag, and I was like, "What's happening?" He's like, "Oh, it's because I'm Peruvian. Don't worry about it."
Hmm.
And they,
Wow.
yeah, it's and when he had to get dropped off before me, so he's like negotiating with the driver. He's just like, he's like, do not give him anything until you arrive there. Like, don't give him any money. Don't give him any more. If he asks for more money, don't give it to him or anything.
Right.
So, like, I mean, I had already taken cabs by that point, so I knew this. But it just goes to show you, like, people. And I don't think this is necessarily unique to Peru. I don't mean to be putting down the country, but a lot of people in like these countries just don't seem to. There's just a general level of suspicion by default, and once they get to know you, that gradually dissolves, and the more friendly side will come out. But it's a different world.
It's just something you have to get used to,
Yeah.
as opposed to living in the U.S. where fares are set, and it's kind of you don't have to do this kind of bullshit negotiation to get from A to B.
Well, it's not. I wouldn't call it bullshit. Like it's just in most countries everything is negotiable. Like that's the norm. The U.S. is unique, and that's the U.S. and I think a lot of like developed countries are unique in that prices are just kind of set. And I think America is a bit more extreme in this end of the spectrum, is that prices are just set. If you like it, you pay it. If you don't, you don't. It's not negotiable. The only things we really negotiate for in our culture are like a car or a house.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else, it's just the price is what it is. But down there, taxis, you can barter with them because they will always try to oversell you. If you just take, like, you have to barter.
Yeah.
Like if you just accept the price they give you, they're ripping you off. They're charging you like 3-4 times what it actually costs.
Just to see if you're stupid enough to buy
Exactly,
it. Yeah.
exactly. I mean, plus the fact that I'm, Caucasian and don't speak Spanish very well, I immediately stick out as a foreigner.
I was gonna get into
So,
that.
I mean, you have a target sign painted on you.
Right.
If you don't, I mean, you're being a fool if you don't barter and negotiate down there.
Do you think that you were? I mean, obviously you touched on it before, but do you think you were treated way differently because you were A, white, and B, from the United States? Did you get a sense of that at all?
Not specifically from the U.S. I don't think that's part of the equation, but just being a foreigner, and yes, in Peru, being a white foreigner is going to be an advantage to you in a lot of situations. It's a double-edged sword because, again, people try and rip you off. I have a hell of a story about that with the medical issue I ran into, which I'll tell you. But it can work to your advantage sometimes. Like there's one a girl I met down there, and I would go over her place sometimes, and she lived in like this high rise that was in like sort of a gated community. There's like a security door at the front, And I never had to show my ID. The guy never even asked my name. I just walked
Really?
in. I was like, "Hola, ¿qué tal?" He's just like, "Oh yeah," and gives like a head nod gesture, like, "Hey, come on in." They, no, they never asked me for anything. Like, but
Wow.
Peruvian people were pulling up in their cars. They asked to see their ID. They're like, "Why are you here? Who are you here to see?" Right?
Interesting.
Yeah, it's
I would have thought it'd be the other way.
no, 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 no. Like they just, like, I mean, their job is security. They're not trying to sell you anything. So
Right.
like they see like a tourist, they're like, all right, he's not here to commit a crime.
Yeah.
Obviously, he knows someone here. He wouldn't be here at all. So I think they just kind of wave you through.
Hmm.
But if I was Peruvian, or probably if even if I was from another Latin country, I would probably be stopped at the gate and they'd ask me, why, what am I doing here? What do you want? What's your business here? But so
Right.
it's it's every day it's like either good or bad depending on what you're doing. And there's uh and that's not specifically related to your what your ethnic background is or anything, or what country you're from. I think there's just a general laxity with rules in Latin America that can again work to your advantage enormously, or it can really fuck you if it's working against you.
Let's talk a little bit about. We'll talk about two topics that were brought up earlier, but
Yeah.
um, the food, A, which will then dovetail into your story of the Peruvian healthcare system or lack thereof. So let's talk about that, and I'm sure there's people who know about the horror stories of south of the border diarrhea, but you have a story firsthand, and
Yeah.
we should probably get into that quickly before we get into our meat and potatoes.
Yeah. Yeah. So one thing that I will say to people that want to go to Peru, and millions of people already know this, is that you're almost guaranteed to get some kind of foodborne illness the first time you go down there. Because, like, uh, I think it's a combination of the fact that there's so little hygiene down there, and the fact that we are overly sanitized
That
here in the at least in the United States. People are constantly washing their hands and using those Purell dispensers
right,
are all over the place. I think people's immune systems are not as strong as they should be, or they naturally would be in certain parts of the developed world. Whereas in Peru, people like shit and don't wash their hands,
I was
and
gonna
then
say,
handle food and stuff.
yeah.
Like
What specifically? What were the highlights of the horror stories of the personal hygiene, bathrooms?
well,
Go over
like
the
yeah,
bathroom
the
a little
bath.
bit.
Well, I mean, if you're going to restaurants, like, and I'm talking like a hole in the wall restaurant that locals would eat in, not like a fancy restaurant aimed at tourists where the prices are inflated like 300%. But if you go to like a little hole in the wall restaurant, you can get a delicious meal for like a hearty, filling meal for like
Mm-hmm.
$3.
Wow.
Because like the food's incredible in Peru. Peruvian food is world class. It is right up there with Mexican, Italian, Chinese, all of the famous world cuisines. And you get ceviche, lomo saltado, which is a type of stir fry. There's Peruvian chicken, obviously, which is very famous. But
Mm-hmm.
if it's just a restaurant aimed at locals, you go to the bathroom. I mean, man, it is a complete roll of the dice whether or not there will be soap to wash your hands with, whether or not there will be toilet paper to wipe your ass with, whether or not there will even be a toilet seat on the toilet. I mean, it just
Wow.
that's just not something that registers in their minds as a problem that needs to be solved. It just doesn't click, and it's something that is enormously frustrating to you when you first arrive, but eventually you have to just accept it and adapt, or you're gonna go nuts. Like you have to take your expectations for how everything, making quote marks with my hand, should work, and just bring them down like 50% at least, and you'll be okay. It's not going to bother you. Like if you come to a third world country expecting everything to work the way it does, back where you're home, you have to ask yourself, like, the question, why did you leave in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
Like, no, the Wi-Fi is not going to be as reliable there. No, the customer service, if it's not a tourist related industry, is going to suck. Customer service really doesn't exist outside of the North America and Western Europe. With possible exception of like some countries like Japan, South Korea, whatnot. But
Mm-hmm.
um, it's they just have a different attitude. It's just they have a seemingly more fatalistic, hands-off attitude towards solving problems. And when I see like the state of the aforementioned bathroom, I'm like, this is disgusting, but it's a fairly simple thing to solve.
Right. But it doesn't.
No one takes the initiative
Yeah.
and does it. It doesn't click in anyone's minds to do that down there.
You know what I've
But
always thought about, and working in the past with people from South America and
speak up a little.
those areas, you wonder what they think when they come to the United States and they see, our living conditions, our bathrooms, because I'm from what you're saying, I'm guessing that even our lowest standards of bathrooms here, the gas station bathroom, is probably at least a step above most day-to-day facilities in Peru.
I wouldn't go that far. I'd
No?
say the examples I gave are, I wouldn't say it's the norm, but it's like 40% of bathrooms in
Wow.
like cheap restaurants are like that. So yeah, it's like, go if you're eating at like a cheap restaurant, expect the bathroom to look like a McDonald's bathroom in Detroit, or like a gas station where you have to ask for the key to use the bathroom.
Gotcha.
Things like that. But getting back to this whole how I got sick thing. I got chifa, which is Peruvian Chinese food, and boy did I learn my lesson. Don't ever, ever, ever get Chinese food in a poor country.
How did it taste?
Because it was delicious.
Really?
It was incredible. It was it's a dish called like chaufa de pollo, which is like chicken with fried rice. Again, a type of stir fry, and very typical of what you'd find in a Chinese restaurant around the world. But
And it
Chinese
looked like
restaurants,
something you could trust.
yeah. It seemed like a safe thing to order.
Right.
Chinese restaurants are notorious here in the United States for cutting corners with health and safety standards. So I can't even imagine what was going on in the back of that kitchen in
Do you think you
Lima.
ate chicken?
It was chicken, yes.
It was?
It was definitely chicken. But I think what happened was the chef took a shit, didn't wash his hands, and then picked up like a chicken breast that had been sitting out for 9 hours. Because it's very common to see meat just sitting out unrefrigerated, flies crawling on it and whatnot. And like in markets and stuff,
Mhm.
and I'm assuming that happens in like crappier restaurants
Yeah.
and whatnot. But yeah, I paid the price for it. I was horrific food, high fever, running to the bathroom every 25
Hallucinations.
minutes. Yeah, I was delirious. I was staying in this fucking dump of it was like a hostel, like spelled Hostal, it's like a normal hotel. But what I didn't realize is that if it's spelled that way, it's frequently used as like an hourly hotel that couples will just check into and bang in the middle of the day and then leave. It's not normal for someone to stay there like 5 days like I did.
So they didn't have the accommodations that you were prepared
for. Yes and no, but and the reason I say that is because like people tend to live with their family until they're married down there. They don't have this culture of like going off on your own in your
Right.
20s. So that presents a logistical problem. If you meet a member of the opposite sex you want to spend some time with, what do? You can't bring them home to your parents. It's conservative Catholic culture. You can't
Mm-hmm.
bang in your house. The solution, ta-da, the hostel, an hourly hotel. So people just check in there and fuck in the middle of the day or at night, what have you, and then they leave. No fuss, no muss.
Wow.
But I was staying in a place like that, and that's when I got sick. And yet, like, there's like this. The window my room opened in. It didn't open out to
Mm-hmm.
the outside, so it opened into this little like air shaft. It is about like 12 by 12 feet, and you can like look up and down and see all the rooms and levels.
Right.
And you can just hear echoes of like people fucking in other rooms and stuff. So I'm like laying there like, ugh, like sweating, hallucinating. I probably lost 10 pounds from my bi-hourly trips to the bathroom, and you can hear people banging in other rooms. So my friend uh, helped me check out and then check into another hotel, and I barely even remember moving. I just was like delirious. I woke up in the other hotel, and for a couple seconds I couldn't figure out how I got there and anything. But
So
I was sick for like 4 days, and
was that the lowest point in your Peru trip?
no, I'd say
Oh God.
honestly that I made that sound really horrible, but it was a pretty uh, mundane occurrence. People get people get sick when they travel. That happens. It was probably a little bit worse than it might normally be, but no big deal. It passes.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was in Cusco, which is where I really started to begin the research for this trip, like looking at the ruins and whatnot, I developed an issue with one of my eyes, where I
Mm-hmm.
started losing some of the vision in one of my eyes, my right eye.
Is it from the altitude?
Well, they thought the altitude might be making it worse. And it turns out they were right. I went to a couple different doctors. None of them knew what was going on. One guy thought it was a problem with the retina. And it turns out that was correct. But I needed to get this test done. He sends me to this place. They tried to rip me off, charge me 2,000 soles, which is like $650, $700
Wow.
to run this simple test that takes like not even 5 minutes. And I refused to pay that and walked out. And then I found out afterwards it only costs like 400 soles
Wow.
to do it. So I eventually had to go back to Lima, and they determined that it was some sort of infection in my eye that was exacerbated by the altitude, because Cusco's like 11,000 feet up.
So,
And
what-
within about 10 days, everything cleared up, and my eye's fine now. But that was probably the low point, like going blind in one of my eyes and not knowing why or how long it's gonna happen or anything. That was fucked up. But and by the way, I'm not trying to discourage anyone from going to Peru. By all means, go. It's an incredible country. You will love it. But every person I told that story to was completely like startled by it. Like, I've never even heard of anything like that happening. So my experience is not typical. That was an unusual, bizarre thing.
Yes, and you like to spend your time in cheap rooms and
No,
yes.
no. I was staying in a hostel aimed at foreigners. If it's spelled HOSTEL.
So you learned that down there, though.
Yes, I learned that down there,
Yes.
but this is a chain that has multiple locations. I stayed at the one in Lima. It's very nice.
Let me ask you this:
Yeah.
if you were to spend 8 days down there for a vacation,
Yeah.
at a decent hotel,
Yeah.
a nice hotel,
Yeah.
would it have been a better experience?
No,
No.
look, dude, you're getting fucked staying in major chain hotels. You're getting absolutely raped in the ass with what you're paying there.
Even
Like,
if
you
they have
do-
air conditioning.
the air conditioning is not worth $200 a night. If you're going on a short trip and it's just like, I don't give a fuck, I'll throw money around.
Yeah.
Because I'm only here for 8 days. That's one thing. I was there for 2 months,
Right.
so I needed to be a little more selective about where I'm staying. And this place, I had a private room in. It was like $40 a night, and you have to understand that $40 will get you a lot more in a country like that than it will here. Like if you pay $40 a night for a hotel in the U.S., you're gonna have like. You're going to wake up, it's going to look like you're nursing rats. You'll have 5 of them lined up to suck your nipples when you wake up in the morning on the bed. But down there, no, you can get a nice room, like AC, possibly breakfast, whatnot, down there. But I was kind of doing the backpacker tourist trail down there. So that's a different experience than staying in a hotel, but again,
either way, it was a great experience.
Incredible. I'm one of the defining experiences of my life so far, by far. I would strongly recommend everyone do something like this at least once in your life. If not Peru, to pick another country that interests you, and check it out. Try to study up on the language before you go. I'm glad I did that. My Spanish still sucks, but that just practicing those podcasts did help me shorten the learning curve a little bit, and just set aside some money and just do it. Like either take some time off from your job, or if you're in between jobs, that's even better. It's. You shouldn't go through your whole life thinking just getting 2 weeks off to do what you want to do is normal, because it's not. That's a completely socially constructed phenomenon that is unique to the United States, and it's not good. It's not healthy. It's not natural. Do this at least once in your life, and you're gonna enjoy it. You're gonna be glad you did it, but you will have a hard time readjusting. Know that in advance.
I think we should probably, for time's sake, start to get into the
no, we're
real,
like half hour in. So
the real issues. Let's talk about first some of the landscapes that you saw, and obviously Machu Picchu.
Yeah.
But you also saw a couple other interesting things. Let's talk about that first.
So one of the things that's interesting about Peru is that it's so many different climates that are so close to each other. Like imagine like all the geographic and climatological diversity of the United States in a country 1/5 the size of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty much what Peru is. Plus you have the Amazon rainforest in the north of the country. So like Lima, it's pretty hot, humid. You have the beach and everything. You go a couple hours south, you're in the desert. Yeah, I went sandboarding there. It's pretty cool. That's where a lot of the ruins that we're going to talk about in a second here are concentrated. Nazca lines, the Paracas culture, etc. And you go an hour flight east instead of south, you're way up in the mountains.
It's cold, right?
Yeah, this time of year it feels like you're in Scotland up there. It's cold, it's rainy, but the landscape's beautiful. It's absolutely incredible, and that's where you get to Machu Picchu and Ollantaytambo and like Pisac, a lot of these other more unusual sites that are not necessarily on the postcards, but just as interesting.
So, what was your favorite landscape? I guess. What was your favorite building, pyramid, area that you visited? I know you went on a couple tours, but if you had to suggest for somebody to go see one, what would you say?
If I had to suggest one, and I think this is the perfect spring pad to jump into the more paranormal's not the right word, but
extraterrestrial.
Okay, sure, extraterrestrial part of the discussion here. I would go to Sacsayhuaman, which is it's located right in Cusco, so it's really convenient. You take the bus or you fly to Cusco in Peru, and you can do a city tour for like 20 soles, which is about $6.
Okay.
And they will take you up this hill that overlooks like the main like town square called the Plaza de Armas.
Mm-hmm.
Every pretty much every city in Latin America has a Plaza de Armas. It's the equivalent of like a town green, but overlooking Cusco, you have this megalithic site called Sexy Woman, and some people pronounce it Sexy Woman there, but it's these it's absolutely staggering. Is like the size of these stones. We're talking in the 20 to 100-ton range, and what's that so much is, I mean, that's impressive in and of itself, but what really makes this place stand out is how it's designed. It's the stones are irregularly shaped,
Mm-hmm. Like
and
puzzle
yeah,
pieces, kind
and
of
it's almost like they're made out of putty and just like
molded.
molded together, because it literally looks like they were melted and fused together. It's soft edges. There's no uh, there's it's pure stone construction. There's no like
Seemingly no
metal frame.
separations or anything
Yeah,
either.
they're so precisely aligned that a lot of them. This is the example you hear a lot. You can't fit a human hair between them, and you'll see like a huge irregularly shaped boulder with smaller ones on top of it, which means that one had to be lifted up and
Mm-hmm.
placed like 10 feet up in the air on top of these smaller ones. And
And these cultures, this is from cultures that are what? How old were the experts
the
saying?
traditional explanation that the tour guide gave us was that these were built by the Inca. The 1400s or 1300s, what have you. So not if they're going by their dating, it's not that old. It's
In the grand scheme of
yeah.
things, right? But with what technology? Did
That's
they offer any
that's the
explanation?
question. That's the question. You look at this, you're like, how the fuck was this built? And according to the story, the Sexy Woman is significantly damaged. A lot of it was knocked down by the Spanish when they arrived because Pizarro, the leader of the conquistadors, when he saw this structure, the story goes he asked the Inca. He saw how this was built and was just completely baffled by it, and then told the Incas, "Show me your tools. Bring me all your construction tools. I want to see how this was done." And the Inca, the Quechua is their proper name. The Inca is just the name for the king. Brought their tools over, and they're just comparatively crude devices. And he's just like, there is no way you built this structure using these things. If it wasn't built by humans, it must have been built by demons. So it needs to be torn down. And that's exactly what they did. They
Wow.
smashed the shit out of it. So all you see today are the foundations of it. But the foundations alone are just overwhelming. And if you look at if you do your research and look at accounts, like a lot of this is in Graham Hancock's Fingerprints of the Gods,
Mm-hmm.
they were asking, there are other Spanish chroniclers who are not, military guys like Pizarro, so they had more of an interest in the history of this region. They asked them, how did you build this? And the Quechua just started laughing at them. They're like, we didn't build this. This was here when we arrived. So
Wow.
they claimed like a much older, much more advanced culture constructed these things, and this is the perfect segue to get into what I believe. I was reading these all kinds of sources dealing with this stuff, and that while I was seeing it down there, and it takes on a whole different meaning when you're there,
Mm-hmm.
seeing it as you're reading about it. But
So what are your thoughts?
the theory presented in Fingerprints of the Gods is that there's a much older civilization in Peru that was founded, or at least led by a race of people called Viracochas. And Viracocha is kind of like the supreme creator god of the Incan religion, and
Okay.
of all the Peruvian indigenous religions. They all pretty much had the same pantheon of gods that they worshipped, even if they were different cultures.
Okay.
Similar to how the Greeks and the Romans had the same.
Exactly. Exactly.
But there's one like supreme Viracocha, and then he had a bunch of like lesser beings, like attendants, that are called Viracochas, like plural.
Mm-hmm.
And what makes this unusual is that this race of beings were depicted on in carved statues, which I saw some of them in reliefs and whatnot, and in the folklore that they have there, as being tall, white-skinned beings with beards.
Interesting.
What's interesting is that people from that part of the world, they're not tall. The indigenous people are generally fairly short. They're they're obviously not white-skinned, and they do not have facial hair. In the indigenous peoples in North and South America, I think you know this,
Mm-hmm.
do not grow facial hair. It's just
Right.
not in their genetic makeup. But the depictions clearly show this guy, Viracocha, as having a beard. He's tall and has white skin. And the legends go that the earth had been destroyed by a series of calamities like natural disasters, floods. So there's a worldwide flood, and that after the waters receded, people were scattered around. They were living like animals. They were like terrified, and then these Viracocha beings appeared and taught them how to grow crops and like build monuments and stuff, and taught them about astronomy and mathematics and everything, and basically taught them civilization. And then they went from place to place in throughout South America on this like civilizing mission,
Mm-hmm.
like elevating people's ways of life there. And then when their work was done, they they disappeared in ships across the sea that moved by themselves. They got in, like, they laid down in these ships, and they just moved without any oars or sails or anything, and they disappeared in the ocean. And what's interesting is that if you go a couple thousand miles north in Mexico, you have the exact same legends up there. They have different names for them. They call them Quetzalcoatl down there. And again, a white-skinned being that taught the native people about civilization and how to construct things and change the way they live, and like live in peace and harmony and everything. And then uh, Mexico, it's a little bit different. There was an evil god that defeated Quetzalcoatl, and he said he would return one day. So it was kind of like this
Warning.
No, it was kind of like a prophecy that
Uh-huh.
they drew hope from.
Okay.
And in both legends, he fled across the sea and was promising that he would return someday. And this is part of the why in both Mexico and Peru, the Spanish were able to defeat them so easily, is because they're white, they have beards, they physically resembled these gods that they worshipped, and they honestly thought, like in Peru, like this is Viracocha and his attendants returning. So that's
Wow.
like and in addition to that, there was a civil war in the Inca Empire when they arrived. So they used that legend to their advantage and just plowed over them.
Hmm.
But the indigenous peoples all worship this same sort of pantheon of Viracocha deities, and they were responsible for building, according to what they're saying, Sacsayhuaman, in Bolivia, Tiahuanacu and Pumapunku, those huge structures that have been featured on Ancient Aliens. It looks like giant letter H's.
Mm-hmm.
And those are ones they've had like engineers from MIT come down, and they're like completely befuddled by this. Like there was a one example where this guy is like some uh, multi-millionaire who is just interested in this, says, look, I have an unlimited budget. I want to commission you to make one of these. Just make another like copy of this structure, like
Mm-hmm.
Puma Punku, and they're just like like no, we can't do that. He's like, look, I don't care how much it costs. I don't care like what you just tell me what supplies you need. Like it's fine. He's like, no, you don't understand. There is nothing. There is no equipment in the world that can build something like this. It cannot be done. Like it's like it's all carved from one rock. So his objection to that was like there is no way with technology
Mm-hmm.
available now that you can carve something like this all from one rock.
It's almost like it's 3D printed,
Yeah,
kind of. It's bizarre. It really is. That's incredible. So
but
were there any insight as to ideas of what type of technology specifically was used, or is it just the magic aspect?
there's the you have to go by the like the folklore describing how this stuff was built.
Mm-hmm.
The legends say that Saxy Woman was built all in one night, and it was built by uh, these beings that could make they just like whistled, and the stones would fall into place where they wanted them to, and that sounds a lot like the acoustic levitation
Mm-hmm. In Florida, right?
phenomenon. What's it? Yeah, with the coral castle
Yes.
thing
Yep.
in
Yep.
Florida, and that's not a hoax. This does work. Acoustic
Yeah. Yeah.
levitation. Like there's videos on YouTube. You can look this up. It's never. I mean, they're doing it with stuff like ping
Coke
pong balls
bottles
and
and
little
yeah.
like Coke bottles and whatnot. But according to the stories, that is clearly what's being described. They're using sound to move objects. I don't know the exact science behind it, but
Yeah.
that's their explanation for how certain things in Peru were built. And what's really fascinating is that Graham Hancock kind of compares and contrasts the stories in Peru and Mexico a lot. And in Mexico, he's recounts the legends that the Aztecs were telling the Spanish is that a lot of the pyramids that predate the Aztecs were built by a race of giants.
Here we go.
Yeah. Here, oh, my shit's about to get real.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Strap in. And they said they were built by a race of giants who were used to build these megalithic structures. They had great strength, obviously, but for some reason the way these giants were behaving was angering the gods, so they punished them by flooding the world,
Which is
destroying
similar
that.
to the story in Christianity.
It's exactly the same. Like the Nephilim
Mm-hmm.
giants that were like spawned by the Nephilim were angering God, so he destroyed them using a global flood. And the Peruvians have a global flood myth as well. And I didn't see so much talk about giants down there specifically, but I did see the skulls in the collection in Paracas.
That would be my next question.
Yeah.
So, is there a theory that these skulls are actually giants, or are they connected in any way?
This is what the deal is with the skulls in Peru. There's a museum in Paracas, Peru, about 3 hours south of Lima, and that's the one I visited. I linked up with Brian Forrester there. And he's the assistant director of the museum, and he's been featured on lots of programs like Ancient Aliens, among them, talking about megalithic sites as well as these elongated skulls. And they have a collection of about 20, 30 of these skulls there, and these belong to the culture that used to live there, like between 2,000 and 3,000 years ago in the Paracas region. And what made these people unique is that they had the cranial deformation. A lot of them have these elongated skulls, which you're going to see on Facebook, where it just stretches straight back.
Mm-hmm.
It looks, they look almost
it's
like
long. It's like
it's
almost
long.
1.5 feet or something, right?
Some of them.
Yeah.
Not most of them are smaller than that, but
How wide are they? I'm trying. Do they
Well,
look
some of
thinner?
them, most of them are sort of cone shaped
Mm-hmm.
and going backwards. A
Gotcha.
lot of them are sort of like fat and like almost like saucer
Oh,
shape.
wow.
So the theory is that depending on the shape of someone's skull, that sort of denoted what social caste they belonged to. But they did some. Brian Foster claims him and his team are doing some genetic testing on the skulls, and most of them are human. So this was done intentionally, uh, because they thought either it made them more attractive or it made them resemble the upper classes more. But about 5% of them have some anomalous mutations, which are just completely unparalleled in anthropology. Like they don't match any known type
So,
of mutation. So go ahead.
so what you're saying is the some of the skulls could have been regular human skulls that were molded.
They are.
Okay,
Like
so
that's proven beyond a doubt.
okay,
Most
so
of them
then
are.
you have the genuine, naturally occurring skulls like
Yeah.
that, which
So
were probably mimicked by these
yes,
humans.
the theory is that the he thinks that this represents some sort of evolutionary dead end, like the Neanderthal man,
Mm-hmm.
because some of these skulls, like, again, they were mummified. The bodies, very common practice in that part of the world. And you have they're in the desert there, which is one of the driest places in the world, so they're perfectly preserved. And some of the skulls still have the skin and the hair on them.
Wow.
And when you look at some of these skulls, and I saw this with my own eyes, some of them still have the hair on them, and they have red hair. Like these are they have dark skin, but they have red hair.
So
So
red-headed, elongated skulls from
yes,
Peru.
yes. So his theory is that this is some sort of extinct, like phenotype of people. Like a phenotype would be like people with a certain color eyes or a certain skin tone or hair, and that these people migrated across the Pacific like thousands and thousands of years ago and ended up in Peru because he mentioned to me that the whole like blonde and red hair, that uh, genetic feature actually originates in Central Asia, like Iran, uh, like Kazakhstan
Mm-hmm.
area, and then most of them migrated west into Europe, and that's why you have like white people in Europe that look like that. And then some of them went east. Like you'll see Afghans that have blonde hair, green eyes.
Mm-hmm.
It's not common, but you do see it. So his theory is that this race of people migrated to Peru and like established them a civilization there. And there were some indigenous people that came into contact with them, and these redheaded people, who we'll call the Paracas culture, were the ruling caste there. But eventually, because this was a small population, they similar to what they like royal families in Europe, they were only marrying in their own
Oh,
class to keep the bloodline pure. And
gotcha.
eventually, they were starting to become inbred and dying out. So they started interbreeding more with the local people. But what happens is the natural feature of the elongated skull starts to fade after a few generations. So people started doing it manually to their children in order to preserve that look.
Oh, that's bizarre.
Yeah, so like they were losing that part of their identity, so they began like manually deforming the craniums of babies in order to preserve that look.
So kind of like the shoe thing. I think it's in China, right?
Yeah, sort of. It's kind of like foot binding, yes.
Mm-hmm.
But they endured for quite some time, and then Brian believes that they were wiped out by the Nazca culture, the people who built the Nazca lines. After about 1,000 years, they moved in and kind of took over, and then they basically just, maybe genocide isn't the right word. They just wiped out what was left of these people with the red hair
Wow.
and whatnot. And you'll recall from the episode we did about the Nephilim and giants in the U.S. the legends about the giants that lived in North America. And again, they had red hair, according to the stories. And this was a race of people that I guess seemed to be an evolutionary dead end and were wiped out by the Native Americans.
Now, that was my other question. Is there any Are there findings of these elongated skulls anywhere other than Peru, or is
Yes.
this unique to just Peru?
No, all over the world.
Okay.
I asked Brian about this, and he showed me photos. And this is, you can find all this online. This is not just one person saying this. They find elongated skulls in Siberia, in Egypt,
Wow.
in North America as well, in the U.S., Canada, in parts of Europe. Like there's a skull found in Germany that's like 30,000 years old. It's elongated. Middle East. It's one of those bizarre things that's it's bizarre in and of itself, but it's exponentially more so because it's of how common it is. It suggests that there was some sort of widespread presence of
This
people,
race, yeah.
of whoever this race of beings was all over the world, and people were doing this to themselves in order to look like them.
Wow.
But,
So, you were able to spend some time with him there.
Yeah.
And obviously, I think we're going to try and get him
yes,
on the podcast, which would be amazing to have a real expert in this. So we can only talk about what we've read and seen. Obviously, you have some firsthand experience, but what an incredible experience it would be to have him on the show and to
I
give
think
us expert detail.
I spoke with Brian about that. He has agreed to come on the show.
That's
I think
great.
we're going to set that up sometime in the summer because he's doing some tours right now. He runs a tour company in addition to researching this stuff. He's in Bolivia right now, and then I think he's going back to Egypt in June. So this is we're probably looking at sometime in July or August. We're going to have him on the show.
Great.
So we'll definitely keep you posted on that. And God, I've kind of, this has almost been a monologue. I've just been rambling about this stuff on and on, but like you start to scratch the surface with this stuff, and there's so much more underneath. And no matter how much you think you know, there's always it's like the more you learn, the more you realize how little you know.
Exactly, and I think that's true with this whole issue. Really, I mean, the other than him and a select few, there's really nobody concentrating on this, and it's kind of thought of as a freak.
A fringe
science, not pseudo-scientific study.
There's a lot of arrogance and dismissiveness, and
but why? What are they trying to cover
well,
up?
It contradicts with the established historical narrative. People that are very invested in this don't want to admit that they might have been wrong their whole careers.
You're saying,
you saw this. I posted this on the Facebook page. The Dr. Zahi Hawass freaking out about in his debate with Graham Hancock. Now he stormed out of the room. He they eventually managed to calm him down enough that he would come back, but he threw a fit like a child, which is such an embarrassment because he was at least at one time. He was like the face of ancient Egypt for like a couple decades.
Right.
Like I remember seeing him as a kid on TV, and
well, it's a pride thing at that point.
Like he was freaking out because Hancock was going to introduce evidence for about the the Orion correlation theory, the Great Pyramids aligning with the constellation of Orion. That was evidence put forth by Robert Bauval, who is a colleague of Hancock's. And Bauval was involved in some sort of scandal last year where like 3 guys from Germany that were working with him. I don't know the facts here, so sorry guys if I'm fucking this up, but he apparently had these guys take samples, like chip pieces of one of the pyramids off so they could do like carbon dating or something like that on it, which I guess they kind of broke the law doing that, or they
but in
there was a gray area. They were not authorized to do that or something.
But then that tarnished his whole image probably, and that gives his critics some ammo against
Well,
him.
it gives some critics some ammo, but I think they're claiming these tests they ran on it corroborate Baval's theories. Like
Gotcha.
it strengthens his argument. So he was freaking out because he didn't want Baval's name even mentioned. Like, I won't take part in this if you're going to introduce his ideas. So, but it's indicative of this whole like dismiss something that contradicts. Like there's an established worldview, and if you challenge the pre-existing narrative or worldview, you're going to get attacked. You're going to be ridiculed and whatnot. And it's starting to change, because the internet and everything. They don't have this monopoly on information and
Not yet.
education anymore. But
It is interesting that you kind of see this connection between the academic elite and world leaders and governments and stuff like that. Because if you ultimately, the New World Order's goal is to erase the past and keep things going in the direction that they wanted to go into, their goal. So, any type of history that's not in the same path that they want to go in is going to just give strength to the opposition.
Yeah, they will challenge interpretations. They will erase interpretations, suppress interpretations that disagree with the society or even just worldview that they're trying to espouse.
Yeah, they rewrite the history books.
Yeah.
And I mean, we see that on a daily basis. You look in history books in Europe, they're different from history books in the United States.
Yeah,
that's somewhat normal, but we're talking about, like Atlantis. There's considerable evidence that this society did exist, but you're thought of as a fringe lunatic for even discussing the idea. Outside of, it's certainly not allowed in high level academia, and the people that do discuss it are kind of shunned away.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of peer pressure. Like everybody, I've said this before on the show. Everybody wants to be first to be second. No one wants to be that first guy that risks his reputation,
right,
and risks being criticized by his peers to put forth an idea like this and stand behind it. And that's why a lot of these people that don't are pushing these ideas. They're not necessarily people with PhDs. But they're, that doesn't mean they're not just as knowledgeable as someone. They've devoted their lives to this shit. Like
exactly, and that leads you to another point where, it used to be you weren't even allowed to go onto a podium or gain an audience if you didn't have a PhD.
Yeah,
and that's certainly still true in the university scene and colleges in the United States and probably most of Europe. But unless you have that PhD in anthropology or archaeology or something, you're not considered to have any say in the situation.
Absolutely.
And right now, you can get the same information on the internet. You can, obviously there's perks to attending a university, but the idea that someone doesn't have a intellectual standpoint based off of independent research is ridiculous.
Yeah. The idea that someone's work or their opinions are somehow negated or not relevant or illegitimate because they don't have the same credentials as people's with the opposite point of view is just absurd. I mean, it's such a relic of this, it's just elitist, highly closed-minded way of thinking, which I see it starting to crumble and fade away.
I do too, and it's true because you have the people with the PhDs setting the curriculum, teaching the future PhD students.
Yeah.
And, when I saw it firsthand, I mean, obviously it was slightly different, but when I was doing my master's thesis, I attempted to do a topic that was not in line with what the university was trying to have me do, and it was considered a fringe topic, and my sources were considered to be not professional.
So they
And
just shut it down in that
exactly.
way.
So just a quick note was one of my sources and one of my experts in the field was Dr. Malachi Martin. Now, this is a man who
I know. Yep.
yeah, this is a man who spoke 12 languages, had 4 PhDs, multiple master's degrees, and was employed by the Vatican and was a Roman Catholic priest. But because he had certain views, he was considered to be an unreliable academic source.
Yeah. So again, this can a lot of this prejudice is aimed at people within the system too. It's not
It's
just.
very true.
It's not that it's not like this monolithic opposition here. If you're part of the machine and you deviate from the accepted view of the truth, like you're they'll eat their own too. They'll
True.
punish one of their own for stepping out of line. So I didn't know that until you just told me that. Now I can't believe they wouldn't. So they actually didn't let you do your topic because you wanted to use Malachi Martin as a source, or
because I based most of my research on his findings.
Yeah.
They thought that the thesis was not valid.
And what's their opposition to him? They think he's just making it up, or he's like a.
I can understand slightly what they were saying, and I know we're getting off topic here,
Yeah,
but
sure, yeah.
He is the author of a couple of fiction books, thrillers.
Yeah.
Windswept House, Keys to This Blood, I believe.
Yeah.
A couple of large fiction works, but they are based off of his experience in the Vatican.
Right. But he's upfront that this is fiction.
Yes. But he also comments that these are based off of truths that are inside the Vatican and based off his 35 years of working in the Vatican. Yeah. But for whatever reason, the academic elite at the university, which I won't disclose right now, claimed that his works were fiction and that the majority of his writings were unreliable, even though he had multiple PhDs in actual scientific-based areas of academia. There's a difference between somebody with a PhD in education and one in anthropology and
sure.
I believe he had some in mathematics and whatnot as well. So it's just incredible.
We're gonna have to do a show about that. That we've been talking about that.
Actually, we were planning, and I think this is going to be coming up in the next couple of weeks. That I want to do a show about my thesis.
Yeah.
So we're going to get into that, and it's a subject that has gotten a lot of publicity in recent years, especially in movies. But it involves the world of the paranormal and exorcisms and demonic possession. So there's
interesting stuff.
There's a lot of information out there, and I consider myself to be very knowledgeable on the subject. So we're going to definitely dive into that in the next couple weeks.
Looking forward. We may have a guest on the show as well.
Yep, we're looking to
an expert on this.
We're looking to get a real true blue exorcist on the show. So that's definitely something to look forward to. Yep.
I can only imagine what he's seen. All right, guys, we're at about an hour and 10 minutes now, so I think we're going to start wrapping up now. It's been a hell of a show. We've covered a lot of stuff here, but there's even more stuff in the works. There's a lot going on in the world right now. We're going to be talking the next few weeks about this Jade Helm crap that's going on in Texas.
Very interesting.
You got to get caught up with this on InfoWars. Alex Jones has been flying off the handle about this, but not without good reason. We're going to be getting into secret societies. Going to do several episodes about that. And we've got a lot of good stuff coming up. So thanks for tuning in. Check out the pics of the Paracas skulls and let us know what you think. Post your comments on Facebook. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Mr. Revere, got anything else?
Just like we said before, stay motivated, stay on top of our YouTube channel, and keep watching the views. We need all the We needed all the support we can get. So we're looking to make this thing big, and obviously we're getting a lot of feedback too.
Yeah.
I have some contacts in California that actually were spreading the word out there. So
join the false flag street team.
Exactly. So remember, be aware, and don't turn in your guns. That is all.
I love it. All right. Thanks, guys. See you soon.